Welcome back, everybody. This is the Peace of Living podcast, and I'm your host, Jason, and
Allison.
And we are here together with you on another Sunday night. We're so excited to talk with you. It's been a pretty cool week. We've had some pretty cool things happen.
Oh, it's been great.
Yeah, so this week we had our first Institute class that we are holding out at Brighton Seminary, Wednesdays at 6:30 to 8 o'clock. And Brother Johnson and I, who work out there, well, just a little quick background. Institute enrollment, if I can just do a quick plug, is very low. It's about 3% across, from Logan to Payson. 3% of 18 to 30-year-olds are attending Institute, which means 97% are not. And so we thought, you know what? Let's create a class where former graduates of Brighton Seminary can come. And because I've been there for 6 years now, I know a lot of the kids. I've taught a lot of them. And let's have them come back to a place that they're familiar with, bring some friends, and be with a teacher that they know and they're comfortable with. And it was like really awesome. We had 45 kids show up this last week, the first night. And that was just incredible. And if any of you are listening, I'm still just thinking about that night and just how amazing it was. It was incredibly spiritual, I think, for everybody that was there. And if you're listening to this, you're welcome to come. Please bring your friends. It's one night a week, again, at the Brighton Seminary building from 6:30 to 8. And it was just really, really cool. It's been a great week. That was just definitely a highlight for me.
Oh, yeah. You've been glowing ever since Wednesday night. I mean, clearly that class had a big impact on you, just seeing all your not all of them, obviously, but a lot of your former students and how they've grown. And you said there were a lot of kids there that have just changed and really transformed through the years, which is really rewarding to see as a teacher. I told Jason it was like his Mr. Holland's Opus moment.
It really kind of felt that way. Hope to have many, many more of them, but
not quite at that age.
Yeah, definitely.
A mini one.
I'm just enjoying the ride, and it's just incredible. So anyway, if you're listening to this and you were there, thanks for coming. If you're listening to this and you weren't there, please come, bring your friends, and it's just a wonderful time to be together with some just great people. I was saying to my dad, my parents attended, and I was, we were talking, and if anybody's worried about the future, especially the future of the church, you just come to one of these classes and you're going to see just some of the best kids, you'll ever hope to meet. And I'm just so deeply proud of them. So with that kind of introduction, it's actually kind of set my mind in a state where I've been thinking a lot about those kids and thinking about my experience in my 20s, especially, and just kind of some of those big decisions that came. And we wanted to talk tonight, to everybody, but maybe especially those that are looking at the road ahead. And that could be anybody. That could be in their 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s, even 70s. What's the road ahead?
We're cutting it off at 80.
Yeah, 80, you're pretty much done. Just kidding.
This applies to you too. You matter.
We love you.
If you're listening.
Yeah, if you're listening, I don't know. I hope you could access podcasts. Maybe not. I don't know.
Not anymore.
But I've just, what's on the road ahead? We read in the articles of faith that, we believe in all that God has revealed, and we believe, and this isn't perfect, but we believe that he will yet reveal many great and important things pertaining to the kingdom of God. And I would also include many great and important things pertaining to the life of you, of whoever's listening, to all of us. And I think that we can get, kind of stuck in our habits and routines, which are good, but sometimes we maybe shortchange ourselves in thinking, well, maybe this is I've figured it out. Maybe I'm even married now and I'm in a career and I'm just going to, set, or even retired, right? I'm just going to set cruise control and ride this thing out to the end. I don't know. But I just love that idea that no matter what stage of life we're in, and especially I would say probably, early on in our 20s, just out of high school and in college, that the Lord has many great and important things pertaining to the kingdom of you and your life. And there's going to be many great and important things that come. And so that said, we wanted to talk tonight a little bit about finding your calling in life. Like, what are you here to do? Now, let's assume we all know that we're here to, have a family and serve and keep covenants and be faithful and all of that stuff. I want to talk specifically tonight. How to find your calling with like your work that you do and your service that you do in your life, because that was something it's been a very deep and personal, great, but also a struggle of a journey for years to find and to find my way into what the Lord would have me do. And also just kind of like learning more about myself on what sorts of things like bring me happiness. So I kind of want to just run through some of my story a little bit. Allie's going to share some of her story with kind of the different just jobs and careers that we've both had and the things that we've learned from them, but also how each opportunity and experience that we've had has brought us closer to just finding and living in joy. Anyway, just a couple quick thoughts before I jump in. So there's a couple authors that I've loved. One of them is a personal hero of mine. I love him. He's a scholar, PhD, all of that. His name's Parker Palmer, and he's a Quaker, but he has written extensively about he's a very spiritual man. He's like, he writes a lot about finding your calling and teaching. He's a teacher. But really, really good stuff. But I wanted just to give you a couple things to kind of set the tone before I launch into some of my own stories. But, so just thinking about your calling, like what does God what are you supposed to do? What is your career? What are you here what are you here to do? And, what makes hearing this call so difficult, he writes, is that God's voice is not the only voice calling out to us. The challenge is to hear God's voice in a cacophony of voices. And he writes, there are different kinds of voices calling you to all different kinds of work. And the problem is to find out which is the voice of God rather than of society or even your own super ego or self-interest. And then he goes on and he says, how is one possibly to discern God's voice amidst the noise? And it says, by and large, a good rule for finding out is this: the kind of work God usually calls you to is the kind of work that you need most to do, and B, that the world most needs to have done. The place God calls you to is the place where your deep gladness and the world's deep hunger meet. And I'm going to say that one again. The place God calls you to is the place where your deep gladness and the world's deep hunger meet. I just love that, thinking about the intersection between your deep gladness and the world's deep hunger. That's kind of like where you are, like you at your core, like deep inside, like what calls out to you. I know I'm talking a lot here. Jump in.
No, when you said that, I had just been looking up a quote from Aristotle that matches that. Who were you quoting in that one?
It was Parker Palmer, but he might have been quoting someone else.
He might have gotten this from Aristotle because he said, where your talents and the needs of the world cross, there lies your vocation.
Yeah, well, that's interesting. You brought up the word vocation because the word vocation comes from the Latin word vocare, which means to call, which means the work a person is called to by God. That is like the definition of vocation. Isn't that cool? Vocare.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's the work a person is called to by God. And I have to believe, I not just believe it, I know, or we know that from many scriptures in all the standard works, every single one of the standard works, Bible, Old Testament, New Testament, Book of Mormon, Doctrine and Covenants, spiritual gifts are talked about in each one. And we know that every person has at least one. And I think most people have many. And God has given those spiritual gifts, those things that just come naturally to you, the things that you can do naturally, better than somebody that could just spend years trying to do. Those God-given gifts, talents, abilities, inclinations, whatever, passions, even interests, even are given to us on purpose. And I think that when we tap into those natural gifts, talents, passions, desires, whatever, it's not just like, this is like what I find interesting or what I'm good at. It's like those things, can bring you a whole lot of joy by using them, but also by tapping into something that will allow you to work with those things, you're going to be able to bless a ton of people by using those gifts, those talents, those spiritual things. And even in Doctrine and Covenants section 46, it's when we talk about spiritual gifts, the Lord actually says, like, spiritual gifts are given, and then you'd think he'd say for the benefit of the person that they're given to. The first thing he says, though, is that spiritual gifts are given to people for the benefit of the church, like for the benefit of others. And so, you know, when it comes to like finding your calling, finding your vocation, your job, like what has God called you to do on this earth? A lot of it, I think, has to do with other people. You know, I think that it's for the benefit of all of us. Like if you are good at teaching, or if you're good at like speaking up or even asking questions, if you're good at even like listening, like I think of my own mom, and I know she's listening to this. I would say my mom has the gift of listening. Like a lot of my very best friends from high school who I love and adore, and I miss them. But I think my mom is probably in more contact with them today than I probably am.
That is true.
And why? Because she's so good at just listening. I would come home from hanging out with my buddies, and I know Jared's listening to this. I'd come home from like hanging out with Jared or whoever, and there would be another one of my friends on the couch at my parents' house. And I'd be like, oh, hey, Jackie, like, how are you? You know? And she'd be just there hanging with my mom because she's got a gift for listening.
Well, my favorite is logging into Facebook and seeing how, like, if I'm going to go wish someone happy birthday or something, your mom has already done that.
Yeah.
Like, she is so on it.
She's on it every day. Like just like boom, just first thing, and she feels bad if she misses someone's birthday.
Oh, you should see this woman's calendar, Julene. I love you. Your ability to keep track of things and be organized and mindful of special events just amazes me. Because if there has been anything of noteworthy in your life, she has written it down and knows the exact day, probably hour of the day that it happened.
Yep, when you were. Yep, whenever.
And yeah, like. She just has definitely a gift of thoughtfulness as well.
Yeah.
This is turning into a podcast just lavishing your mother with praise, which is well deserved.
Oh, it's well deserved. Yes.
Well, and
you
I
deserve
like
all of it, Mom.
I like that we're taking this approach of focusing on talents from the angle of helping others, because here's the issue that I've always had when we talk about talents is just speaking as a woman. I feel like for us females, it is harder for us to identify our talents. I don't know why that is, but I think, I'm only speaking for myself here, but I think it's because it's so easy to see what other people are good at. And so we think of talents as like desirable qualities that we should have, right? Or even just like skills that people have. That's a lot of the times talents were synonymous with skills, because talent shows where what's something that you can demonstrate, right? And nobody ever brought their friend up on stage. We're like, we're just going to have a conversation and I'm going to demonstrate what a good listener I am. But come to think of it, someone should do that. If you're listening to this and you get invited to a talent show, make that your talent.
I'm just going to listen.
Yep. Just look at how good I am at listening. But I mean, I'm joking a little bit, but I like that because it's so easy to feel like you don't have talents when you're looking at it through that lens. Because again, the point is not to show people, look how great I am. Look at all these cool things I can do, which is great, obviously. Like if you have specific sets of skills, those are God-given. That's wonderful as well. But
you should own them and develop them.
You should own them and
develop them. You should be proud of them. Don't hide them, right?
I love that helping other people is something that everybody can do on some level. And there are some of us who are good at listening. There are some of us who are good at being there for someone who's going through a hard time. There's people that are good with humor that can make other people laugh.
Like, that's such a great gift.
Yes. Oh, my
Use
goodness.
it.
My sister Natalie comes to mind. Natalie, shout out to you. And all my siblings are actually pretty funny, but I don't know. There's something about Natalie that I've always found particularly hilarious. Just the way she says things. You're my example, Natalie. I strive to be more like you.
Well, and I think of like Jesus when he was like, what good does it do to like hide this candle under a bushel, like or
Right.
whatever? I don't know exactly what anybody says, but you want to put that on a candlestick.
That was it. That was verbatim.
I don't know. Why would you want to put a candle under a bushel? It's gonna start
I've
on
never
fire.
understood that.
But put it on like a candlestick, like
Yeah.
lit it, and you are the light of the world. Like a city that's set on a hill cannot be hid, right?
Oh.
Like whatever. Even like if it was a gift of humor, a gift of listening, a gift of whatever, asking good questions in a class, like.
Yeah.
And you could look at the list of spiritual gifts in the scriptures, and Bruce R. McConkie says they're infinite in nature. The scriptures just give a sampling of the spiritual gifts that are out there. But whatever those things are, they're meant to be used. They're meant to be put on a hill, on a candlestick to bring light to every. It's just, I mean, you could think there's endless metaphors here. Like I was in band and choir, growing up, and I mean, and so are so many of my friends. And so if you're listening, you'll understand this reference. But like, in the band, like not everybody can be a first trumpet. That'd be so dumb. Like it wouldn't sound interesting at all. Everybody has a different part. And even though no matter how small that part is, I mean, sure, there's going to be the first trumpets that always kind of get the most attention. But without like the second clarinet in the back or the French horn or whatever, like that orchestra, that band is going to sound off. Like every part is needed. And every part needs to play it well. They can't just hide and play it softly, because without that, the other parts don't work. Like every part is needed or it doesn't work. And Woods Cross, I think, did a great job at that when I was there, because we were very, very good at the band. And I think it's not just because we were good musicians, but because we were all on the same level. We were all friends, and we were all different. I'm not saying we all hung out all the time. A lot of us did. But like we really valued each other and like as people and the talents that we had like playing music, and that contributed to an extremely like rewarding experience playing in the band and in the choir, because every part is needed, no matter what your talents or gifts are. And tapping into those things, anybody that was in the band and choir back then with us would agree. I know they would agree that it was a very fun experience for us individually, but it also like was really good for us collectively and for the people that would listen. And it just benefited, again, you want to call it the church, you want to call it the world, you want to call it the school, whatever, but your gifts and talents are given to you for the benefit of the church, of the world.
Well, and what a beautiful thing that it's all about the synergy. It's not about vaunting one person up or shining the spotlight just on a select few, but that really as a collective whole, that's the true power, right? When we can all add our light to the collective candlestick, right? Because I used to be scared by that scripture, honestly, about letting your light so shine, because I'm like, I don't want attention. I'm one of those people that would prefer to just not have people focus on me because I get uncomfortable. But I like to contribute, and so I don't want to make it about me, but I can use my talents in a way that is still adding light to the world, that doesn't necessarily have to put the focus on me, nor should it. That's not the point, is to get the focus on ourselves, but to be a blessing to others.
Well, what if everybody shone their light?
Right.
That
Can
light
you imagine that?
It would overwhelm all of the darkness. I think that's part of the point. Like we talked about last week when we were talking about unmasking the adversary, like you can't turn on the darkness. Like the darkness goes away as the light increases. And it's not about like, hey, look at me and my talent. It's like, no, I'm ramping up my light. And so should all of us, because collectively that light will overwhelm the darkness. And it will be the light of the world. It's the light of Jesus Christ. Because Jesus has all of the gifts. And as we take the gifts that we are given inside of us, none of us have all of the gifts like Jesus did. At least right now, we can develop and seek after those things. And we should want to develop more gifts. But if we collectively are shining our own lights, we're shining him on the world. Like we are we're the body of Christ. We're the body of Christ, right?
I've been thinking about the body of the Christ scripture as we've been saying this.
I love
that's
that.
cool
The
that
body
you
of
brought
Christ
that into
can't
that.
all be an eye. That'd be dumb. Can't all be the hand. Every part is needed.
That would look pretty funky.
But if we, if every part held up its light, the darkness goes away.
And the cool thing, again, going back to the metaphor of the candlestick, right? You will never run out of fire passing that around. That's the cool thing. Like a candlestick lighting another candle does not diminish itself. and it only grows in light as you pass it around. I remember somebody sharing this on social media. I don't know who it was, so I'm sorry, but they were talking about how a lot of times there's that tendency to, I don't know what it is about our human nature sometimes, that we kind of resent people who are doing well and sometimes don't want to help them or support them or whatever, because we think that somehow reflects badly on us, which is just not true. Someone's success is not your failure, but that again is a tool of the adversary. That's something that he wants us to think.
Right.
But instead, if we can support each other and lift each other up and share our own light with other people, even if it's just one person that you're shining a light for, then that I can name several people in my life who have shown their individual lights to me and inspired me to take action that I hope has hopefully helped somebody else.
Absolutely. Well, yeah, even with this podcast, how amazing would it be if, like, not that everybody needs to do a podcast, but what if this inspired a few more, right? Like, that's just that much more light,
right,
being shown onto the world and overcoming the darkness.
And it's a little light, but I'm going to let it shine, right?
Yeah, I love that. I love that. So one thing I wanted to talk about, in addition to what we've already said, is just that it's just, what is the definition of success? And I've thought a lot about this through my own experience. And so let me just tell you just a couple quick stories and what I've found to be success in my own life, and like how that definition's kind of changed for me. So right out of college, well, not to give you my whole life story, but like early on in college, my whole plan was to go to law school. And as Allie can attest, I studied for years to take the LSAT. I took the LSAT twice, and that's a horrible test. It was miserable. And I did decently well. I didn't do as well as I had hoped for, but I did decently well, like probably well enough if I had wanted to. I think I could have gotten into the U of U. That's where I wanted to go. I think I could have gotten in there. But it was strange. Like, I took the test, and immediately after taking the test the second time, Allie can tell you, I just felt like I felt terrible. I felt like just total garbage about it. And so I'd studied for years for this thing, but I just didn't feel like it was the right thing to move forward. And so I didn't. I never turned in my law school applications. I had been working on them. I was getting them ready. I had taken the test. Had letters of recommendation ready to roll from like really great people. And it just, I don't know, like, and at the time I was like super bummed out because that's what I had wanted to do. I had wanted to be like a neighbor of mine who was an attorney, and I'd looked up to him my whole life. And it was interesting, like going into like the decade of decisions and like figuring out what is my career going to be? What is my calling? Which I wasn't even thinking about that back then. I just like, my whole idea of getting a career was just to make as much money as possible. Like this was even post mission. I wasn't even so much considering like, what has God called me or put me in this earth to do? It was, how can I make as much money as possible and be a respected and good person in the community where I can provide a good life for my family. And that's fine. I think those are all very honorable things, right? Done in the right way. And so that experience kind of left me like a little, I was doing some deep soul searching, and it was rough there for a little bit, and I wasn't sure what to do. And so the place where I was working, the mortgage company I was working at during college, I worked 2 jobs during college, and one of them was just in the call center, just grinding it out at a mortgage company. It was brutal work, but it paid pretty well, helped pay for my tuition. I graduated from the U debt free, and they offered me a full-time position as a loan officer when I graduated, and I didn't really have any other plans at the moment, and so I took it. And it was an excellent job. It was so awesome. It was so much fun, and I was probably making more money than any little, or mid-20s person should probably be making. But it was so fun to be working there with like a lot of my really good friends. I loved that job so much. And that really did kind of become like the object of what I was seeking in a career, was just to like make a lot of money. And I was thinking that would make, that's success. It's all this stuff, I wanted to just be financially secure, do what I wanted. I want to be free, all of that. And
then you married me.
And then
joke was
everything
on you.
changed. It's funny. A week after we got married, we got back from our honeymoon. I was there at work for a week, and rates spiked, which they have recently, not nearly as bad as they are right now, but there was a significant spike in rates. Business slowed to a halt almost overnight. and they laid off half the company, and I was in that half. And I was in the refinance department. And so like the whole refinance department, there was a lot of loan officers up there, and they only ended up hanging on to like 3 or 4 of them. And everybody else was gone because refinances just dried up overnight. And so I was like, oh my gosh, what am I going to do now? And not to give you, all of the story, but I bounced around to a couple different things and trying to figure things out. I got hired on as a sales manager inside sales manager at a tech company with a bishop that I had really loved from one of my YSA awards that I'd been in recently, or right off my mission. And that was a good experience. But I'll tell you that while we were making, decent money and on the track to make really, really good money, including, 5-day paid trips for my wife and I to Hawaii every year and all sorts of cool perks like that, I was kind of miserable. Ooh, it was tough. Right? Allie would tell you, like, yeah.
Oh, the stories I could tell.
It was tough. It was extremely stressful. And yeah, the money was good and the money coming in was going to be even better, but it was very hard. And I can't really describe it. And it was hard in the sense that I'm not afraid of hard work. I've always worked hard, but it was hard that I just didn't feel anything in my soul. Like it just wasn't resonating with me. And there's, if you think of like tuning forks, or even like if you're Ben Brown, if you're listening, like your crystal bowls, right? If you play a crystal bowl or a tuning fork and you can get the other one and it's set at the same frequency, the other one will resonate and it'll play the same note. And there was no resonating going on there. And it just wasn't like resonating with my soul. And I started to feel like a change needed to be made. And I'll tell my whole seminary story some other time of how I got into it. But let's just say that I felt things in my soul that God was, kind of calling me to something completely different. And at age 30, I made the change from going from sales to teaching seminary full time at 30 years old, which, some kids listening would be like, holy crap, like, I can't believe that 30 years old. Like I want to be, hitting this mark financially or whatever by 30, or have this goal in mind by 30. And if you're still trying to figure things out, and you're not really sure what to do or even what to study, I'm a living witness and proof that you can take some time to figure out like what resonates with your soul. Not that you have to come and teach seminary, but each of us have different gifts, talents, abilities, and things that resonate with us that like just make us happy to go to work. And you've got time, like go and try things out, go and sample. Like there's been jobs that I've had that just haven't been that fulfilling. They didn't resonate with me. Did they check the boxes and provide for the family? Absolutely. Like through Jesus Christ's atonement, every even perceived negative experience can be turned into a positive. And he's done that for us. And he's, so many blessings have come through even the other jobs that weren't ideal, but I did them. I ground them out and worked hard. We both did. And he blessed us so much. I learned so much through those experiences, but I wanted to read this also. I think this is from Parker Palmer, but this is just kind of this describes how I felt inside when I felt like a change needed to be made. And I was scared to do it because again, I was about 30 years old, having our family, and just how it's worked out, like putting my faith in Jesus, things have worked out. And it says here that he writes, how do we know if God is calling us to something new? Do we live in our present calling more deeply or go in a different direction? I think there is a way to know what God wants, as much as a human person can know the mind of God, and that is through the process of discernment, or, like we talked about, hearing Him, hearing the voice of Jesus Christ. People throw that word discernment around rather loosely. Not every decision or choice calls for discernment, or I would say revelation. For example, which movie to see or what to get my nephew for his birthday. But when life presents us with really important or hard decisions, and we want to tune into God's voice, when we want to align our will with God's desire for us, discernment, or hearing the voice of Jesus, is an excellent, reliable tool. The underlying premise of the discernment process is that God wants us to know which way to go. And the way we will determine that is by listening to the movement of our own heart. So, how do you know if God is calling you to something else? Listen to your heart, right? Like the song. When you think of remaining where you are, does your heart feel peaceful, uplifted, energized? When you think of staying where you are, do you feel darkness, weariness, or dread? And that's how I felt. On paper, those jobs were excellent, phenomenal. But I did feel a sense of darkness, weariness, and dread. And I know that's not what where God would have me be. And then he writes, discernment also involves, or hearing the voice of Jesus, laying out the pros and cons of each option, doing some head work on the choices before us, taking time for prayer and seeking advice from a spiritual director or a wise mentor are also important. Sometimes the Spirit uses dreams, conversations with others, even song lyrics to catch our attention and signal the wisps of a new direction. So if you are getting restless stirrings, hunches, or ideas of out of nowhere that something new is afoot, these could be nudgings from the Spirit leading you to a new path. Of course, there are times in our lives when the call is to fidelity, to staying with the commitment, even when it starts to get tedious or challenging. This could be the very time when great growth could happen. Wishful thinking or wanting an easier path is not the same as the fresh breeze of the Spirit calling us to something new. But very simply, God speaks to us in the depths of our hearts, and it's that deep down listening to your heart that will let you hear God's loving call. And I can add my testimony to that those uneasy feelings that might come along when you're in a certain major and you're a couple years into your degree and you're like, well, I don't want to change now, right? Or you're into a job and you've been into it for a few years and you've worked your way up to management and you're like, I don't know if this is for me. I hate coming to work, even though I'm making good money. Those very well could be nudgings from the Spirit, from the voice of Jesus, even saying, yeah, but let's move you over here. You don't know the road ahead. And I can tell you is now that I've gone down that road a little bit, oh man, it's so good. And I don't think this is the last road we'll be on either. I believe that many great and important things pertaining to the kingdom of Jason and Allison Bell, or the lives of Jason and Allison Bell, will be yet be revealed someday. But for now, this road is good.
And from my perspective, for you, it was it's been fun to watch. We would tease Jason. When I say we, I mean I would tease Jason every spring. It was like clockwork. April would roll around because we'd be approaching the end of a school year, and I'd say, Jason, here comes the next job offer, because so Jason has a lot of buddies, lots of connections in different fields because he's had a lot of different jobs. And, since I'm his wife, I can say this so that's not you bragging about yourself. He has a lot of different skills, honestly, and he can contribute to various jobs, I guess. And so it just kind of became this thing where someone out of the blue would reach out to him in the springtime and say, hey, I've got this great opportunity. I would love for you to come on and join us. And every time, because this would be while he's teaching seminary, I should mention.
This has happened every year, the last 6 years. Every year. Since
he's taught seminary, every spring he's had an opportunity to leave, which is no judgment to anybody who does leave.
Oh, for sure.
Because it's not like...
The calling could change.
Yeah, exactly.
Right? Yeah.
Right.
Different times of life.
And it's all about figuring out what's right for you. But it's just been really interesting to watch because there have been so many close calls. In fact, you didn't mention this, but
I'll talk about that.
Do you want
you go ahead. You can tell it, and then go ahead.
Okay. So after Jason got hired the first time to teach seminary, back when I first started teaching, he got hired around the same time. He ended up quitting
Yeah.
a few months after that because his former boss that he had left came back to him and made a really great offer to him that, well, it was
Everything
really
in the
attractive.
moon.
Yeah, it was great.
It was like, name your price. Okay, come on back. We can do that.
And you know what? Like, when we didn't have a house at the time, we had a baby and things were expensive. And so from a financial standpoint, it just made a lot of sense. And you felt good about it though, too.
We both did. I felt good about it.
This wasn't like purely a lucrative move. We
No,
should make
it
that
felt like the
really
right thing.
clear.
It really
it did. Yeah. And you felt a lot of peace about it. And the job itself had changed where your boss was speaking more to your needs as an individual and the role that you wanted to play. So it was a new opportunity at the old job, which was cool.
It's really cool.
And so you ended up going back. Do you want to just tell it?
Yes, this is crazy. So to back up even just a little bit more, to set more of like the stage here, this decision. So Allie and I got hired to teach seminary at the same time, and that has never happened. It was like a really unique experience. It was really, really
cool.
For
husband and wife.
Husband and wife got married at the same time on the same day.
Got married?
Or got hired. Wow.
We got married at the same time on the same day?
Wow, weird. You were there?
What a coincidence.
Okay, cool. But anyway, yeah. So we got hired, and so I got started and spent the summer at East, and that's when this call came from my old boss to come back. And it really did feel like the right thing. But at the same time, it was weird that I had gotten into seminary at all in the first place, because I hadn't really completed the pre-service program. And it's pretty competitive to get hired as a seminary teacher, as a full-time teacher. And so when I got hired, or when they made the offer to me, I did feel like it was kind of like God reaching out and being like, you need to do this. And because it was it's such a long shot. I mean, there's 1,200 student teachers or more a year, and they hire maybe 40 full-time every year. It's slim chances. So for me to get that offer, I was very humbled, and I was like, there's no way this isn't God. And so I accepted the offer, and I quit my job, spent the summer at East High Seminary. And literally 2 weeks before school started, my old boss, who I love and respect so much, he's such a wonderful guy. He was actually a stake president at the time. 2 weeks before school started was like, hey, we want you back. And just what Allie said. And so we both felt really right about it. It wasn't just lucrative. It was you know what? I feel like I put my trust in God to come to seminary, and that's just what I needed to do in the moment. And now I'm needed back elsewhere in a different position. And so I took it. And that year was super, super good, but also super, super brutal. It was very challenging work-wise. And we gave it, just gave it my all. We worked so hard. We just threw everything we had at this thing, and it worked out great. And should I tell the part about the deal? Going back.
Well, back up a little bit.
Sorry. Yeah, I know I'm missing something.
Our house.
Oh yeah. Well, we wouldn't have this house had I not gone back to my old job. We just wouldn't have been able to qualify for it. So, that was a big part of me.
This was 2016, by the way, before everything went super crazy with the housing market.
We got in right before things started to really accelerate. And that couldn't have happened had I not gone back to my old job, which was crazy. And so we were able to get the house, which is the house we're living in right now. And it's wonderful, and we love it. And then I felt, I don't know if guilty was the right word here, but I knew
uneasy.
I was uneasy. So I taught the early morning class at Woods Cross, and just for fun, because I just enjoyed it and wanted to still get that fulfillment out of teaching. And it was so good. It was a great experience. And as the school year went on, and it was about to end, I kind of started to feel, and I feel bad for Allie. It was because I started to feel maybe I do want to do this. And I'd do this again full time. And I'd had some people like Jack Marshall was in our ward at the time, who was just a really well respected institute instructor. And he even was like, why aren't you doing this? And anyway, so I called up the guys at seminary and was like, hey, like if I wanted to get back into this, like what would it take? And the next day, the guy is in the back of my class at 6:30 in the morning watching me teach. And the day after that, they call me up and they're like, are you serious about this? Like, would you consider coming back? Because if you are, we'll put together an offer. And I was like, oh my gosh. And so I don't know, like, meanwhile, so I was teaching early morning. I'd go home and get changed. And then I'd go to my real job, my regular job. And it was like, I can't remember now if it was the day before seminary called me back and gave me the offer to come back or the day after. Either way, I had received news at my job that some deals, especially this big one that we had been working on for months. It was kind of like this Hail Mary of a deal, and that we didn't expect to have happen. But I got a call from this place in New Mexico that we'd been working with, and they called me up and they were like, hey, like we received your proposal a few months ago. We've been looking at it and we want to go with you. And it was nuts. Like this was going to be huge. I mean, just life-changing kind of money, at least for us it was at the time. But it was substantial. I think anybody would say that. And I can't remember again if that happened the day before or the day after seminary had extended another offer for me to come back, but it had come in. And so here I was feeling like God was calling me to something else, to come back to seminary. And then I get like news that this deal was going to come in that was pretty well life-changing kind of money. And I just knew that God like was calling me somewhere else and that I had to go. And so I knew what I needed to do, but it didn't make it any easier. And so I told seminary I needed a few days. And so I just tortured myself for a few days and I physically felt ill about it. And at the end of the day, or at the end of the week, on Friday, I walked into my boss's office for the second time in 2 years and told him, knowing full well that I was going to leave a bunch of that, if not all of it, all that cash on the table, and that I was going to be walking away again. And he was understanding. He was really understanding. He was really, really good about it. And I felt terrible because they'd made this position kind of just for me, but I couldn't deny, what I felt like God was calling me to. And here we are 6 years later, and I wouldn't change it. I wouldn't change it at all. I wouldn't change anything about it. It's been amazing. And there's been so many like miracles and blessings that have come along the way. But if nothing else, I'm in something that I feel genuinely happy about. And going back to what I was saying earlier, in our Western culture, and this used to be me too, we define success so much off of like money and how much money we can make, or the house or the cars or whatever. But for me, success is happiness and becoming like Christ, obviously. But at its core, it's happiness. Am I happy? Yeah. And like, I think if you're happy making 30, 40, 50K, 80K, whatever, then that's awesome. I know a lot of people who make hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars that hate going to their job every day. And I just feel so blessed and fortunate to be in something where I'm happy. And that is good for me, but it's also good for my family. And it's good for everybody. My callings at church, for my community, my neighbors. Like if I'm happy inside, like you just can't put a price tag on that.
Well, you're kind of paying for the experience too. That's something we've said about the jobs that you choose. You really do need to take into consideration your day-to-day life.
Yeah.
Because again, like I don't want anyone to feel bad who's in a very wealthy, well-paying job, because
no, it's great.
It's there's money in and of itself is neither good nor bad, right? It's whatever we choose to do with it and how we feel about it. But what we decided was that it was more worth it for us, like Jason said, for him to be happy every single day in what he was doing, because you are living your life in this job. So if it's not something that was speaking to your soul and fulfilling the gifts and talents that you had to give, that God had called you to give, right? Then it wasn't the right fit. And luckily you found that in seminary. But we need to mention as well, that's not the only thing you do.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, but I think that the other things that I do, I still do mortgages, out of my house as well. Just kind of, they're really slow right now because the market's insane. But I also, were you referring to like the cars stuff?
Yes, I'm referring to the car stuff,
Okay.
to writing.
Yeah, I mean,
Well, little known fact, very few people know this. Jason and I actually have a business
yes,
together. We do. We have an LLC, Bell Creative Services. Isn't that cute?
Yay.
That's
Yeah.
just because both of us, and here's another shout out to a friend, our sweet friend, Scotty Hill, who is just a gem of a human being, if she's listening. She got us into this, like, what, 6 or 7 years ago?
It's like 8 years ago now.
It's been I guess it was before Finn
It's
was
like 8 or
born.
9 years ago.
Yeah. It just told us about how she was writing for KSL and Desert News. I think it was just Desert News at the time.
She was just contributing, yeah.
She was contributing in the arts section because she's a brilliant artist. And she happened to mention that to us about ways that we could submit stories. So Jason submitted a movie review.
Yes, this is a crazy story. Yeah, thanks. I forgot about that. Thank you. So yeah, I was like wanting to write movie reviews back in the day, and I'll just be straight up about it. Like, I wrote a movie review about the Mad Max movie. Mad
Which
Max Fury
probably
Road.
a lot of our listeners have not
Like, what?
watched. And we are not endorsing it,
No,
by the way.
I'm just being honest. I'm just being real with you. I saw it. And I thought it was a very, very well done action movie. And so I wrote a piece about it for the Deseret News and for KSL about why it's good and why you should consider it to be a great action movie. And they rejected it because they didn't, find
the movie doesn't fit the content
exactly.
standards.
Yeah,
of
it didn't
the
fit their
publication.
audience. It didn't fit their audience, which is fine. But whoever rejected it was like, "Hey, we're not going to run this, but we really liked your writing. Would you be interested in writing some pieces here and there, anonymously for a little bit of money?" I'm like, yeah, totally. Let's do it. And so since then, it's been like 8 years now. Well, Allie, we both do it.
I came on board about 5 years ago. I
Yeah.
was later to the game because the funny thing being that, so we both got communication degrees. Yours was in speech. Mine was in mass communication or print journalism was my emphasis. But I had never actually used my degree to write for anything. But then you finally convinced me that I should submit something because I was, I let that fear hold me back. And I thought, why should I? I don't know how to do it. Like, I don't know why I said any of those things to myself. Satan, probably. But,
Yeah, totally.
But yeah.
Put it
then
under
I
a
got
bushel,
into it. Yeah. And all it took was just doing it and getting it out there. And that got the snowball rolling to the point where we now, both of us, write a lot. Mostly still for KSL. That's our bulk of our writing. But I've had the chance to write for several different companies and it's been a blast. But
yeah, like if you ever go on KSL.com and you see those sponsored by articles with no author, there's a good chance that either Allie or myself.
Well, we're on the team. It's not just us. We're like on a team of like 8
half
or
dozen
10
people
or something like that.
And then if you also check out the KSL Cars resources page on the drop down menu, a lot of that is our content. And that's
a lot of that is Jason, especially.
Well, and that, I think of like President or Elder Razban's talk by Divine Design, back in 2017, where he talks about, or actually it's him. Well, there's a lot of great quotes in here, but just one of them, for example, from Elder Maxwell says that, None of us ever fully utilizes the people opportunities allocated to us within our circles of friendship. You and I may call these intersectings coincidence. The word is understandable for mortals to use, but coincidence is not an appropriate word to describe the workings of omniscient God. He does not do things by coincidence, but by divine design. Later on, Elder Worthland said, quoting President Monson, "There's a guiding hand above all things. Often when things happen, it's not by accident. One day, when we look back at the seeming coincidences of our lives, we will realize that perhaps they weren't so coincidental at all." And so going back to me writing a review about Mad Max, that little piece has snowballed into something that it's like a legit full-fledged little side business that we have. And it's been a lot of fun. And I'm writing about cars, which is fun in and of itself, and I get paid for it. Now it is a lot of work. Like, there is a price to be paid. And do we have to do it? Could we survive? Yeah, we probably could, but this allows us to have a little more flexibility, to have some fun, and just have a little breathing room financially. But that would have never come our way had we not just tried it. I sent in just a dumb review of a movie, and it's turned into something. It's incredible.
Okay, here, coming at you with another quote that goes along with what you said. So, this is good. Okay, this comes from Elder LeGrand Richards, who is
LeGrand Richards.
Yeah,
I love that guy.
He's great. So he is a former apostle for the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, deceased. Not sure how long ago. It's been a while, right? Anyway, his quote is, "Not failure, but low aim is often our greatest sin."
That's good.
Oh, man. Talk about resonating. That quote really resonates with me, because that fear of failure can be so paralyzing, where it's like, I don't want to submit that story. I don't want to put myself out there and be subject to ridicule and criticism. That's scary. I'd rather just do the comfortable thing and not make any changes. But if we hadn't done that small little action, that small step, that would not have grown to what it is now. And it's not like we are the world's best writers either, but it's just that it's something that we've just done, and hopefully we're getting better. We can continue to improve, but I love it. It's cool to me. I don't mean to hijack what you were saying,
Go on.
but my goal in high school, I remember they were talking about, what do you want to do when you grow up? And I was in journalism at the time. That was my favorite high school class. That's when I discovered how much I loved writing, was in my journalism class. And I thought, I would love to be a columnist back when columns were a thing. No, now everybody can write whatever they want on the internet, right? But I wanted to be like Dave Barry and have a column that was syndicated through several different outlets, and just be able to write my little piece and stay home and be with my kids. And while I'm not like some big name syndicated author, I have written for several different outlets, most of the time not under my own name, but that's fine with me. Because again, going back to me not liking a lot of attention, that works. But I love that I'm living that dream. And I did a lot of odd jobs in between, and I'm not going to rehash my whole professional experience, but boy, it was a winding, twisting road that got me to where I am now. And like you said, I don't think I'm done. I don't think I've reached a final destination here. I just think that we're in a good spot, and we're going to keep going. For now, this is where we need to be. It's great. Right? Yeah, I love that. Well, and I think of like Elder Razban, again, going off of what you were just saying. I love this. He says, what should you be looking for in your own life? What are God's miracles that remind you that he is close, saying, I am right here? Think of those times, some daily, when the Lord has acted in your life and then acted again. Treasure them as moments the Lord has shown confidence in you and in your choices, but allow him to make more of you than you can make of yourself on your own. Treasure his involvement, even, and I would add, as unexpected as it might be. Could Allie or myself have forced our way and say, no, I'm going to go to law school. It's what I want to do. Or no, I just want to make as much money, right? You could have like forced that, I guess. But man, as unexpected as the twists and the turns for both of us have been,
We've learned to treasure his involvement because I know that he can and will and has made more of my and our life than we could do on our own. 100%. Like I can't explain it. Like, how do you explain that I get to teach, which I love, and I also get to write, which I love,
and drive cars,
which I love. Like, and at the end of the day, like this podcast and like what Allie and I do, we do it because we know that we've been so blessed. And we feel very like the core emotion, all of that is gratitude. And I feel so deeply grateful to Jesus Christ because, as the Book of Mormon very clearly teaches, every good thing cometh from Christ. Every good thing comes from Christ. And I just feel so deeply grateful that, you know, and like we've mentioned this before, maybe I can't go fix someone's house. Maybe I can't go fix their car. You wouldn't want me to anyway. Like, there's lots of things that I know that's not just where my talents lie. But for the talents and gifts that I know that we do have, I will and do want to give all that I can back to his name's glory, because he is good. And he's given us all a little bit of his light that we can shine collectively and drive out that darkness.
And I will say this because we focused a lot on finding the jobs that we're passionate about and finding something that we're happy and successful in. And that's, you know, how lucky for us that we can say right now, we both have jobs that we love. But boy, I know that there are so many people out there listening who are in jobs or careers or whatever you're doing that you're not satisfied in.
Yeah.
And my heart goes out to you because we have been there. And that is, that's so tough.
Yeah.
You have my full sympathies, but here's what I'll say about this. In all the jobs that I had that I did not love, there were always people in those jobs that I loved.
Yeah.
And I think that absolutely I was supposed to be in every single one of the odd jobs that I ended up in for the people that I ended up meeting.
Absolutely.
So I would just say this, if you are currently in a profession that you don't love, that it's not speaking to your soul, that you don't feel totally fulfilled in, that's okay. Don't feel like you're panicking that you need to get out of there ASAP. You know, follow whatever path God has intended for you one step at a time. But in the meantime, make the most of your situation. There are always going to be people to work with, to speak to get to know, to brighten their day. Take advantage of learning from the other human beings that God puts in your life.
Yeah.
Because there are specific people that, as I'm saying this, come to my mind in each of my jobs. Every single one of my jobs, I have met incredible people that have changed me. And I know that God wanted me to meet them so that I could learn from them. So one example is of somebody who was really good at making the most of their situation is my own dad. And if you're listening, Dad, you're one of my heroes, because my dad, in my view, he would have been a really great seminary teacher like you. My dad is very charismatic. He's outgoing. He's friendly. He's a great teacher and speaker, and he has so many gifts and talents. It just so happened that his career path was in banking, which was a good job. And, you know, it took care of our family. He had a lot of ups and downs in that career. Maybe we should bring him on and have him talk about it sometime. But yeah, my dad, he went through a lot in that job. And I know he did it for the sake of his family. And he put up with a lot of things that he did not love. I'll just put it that way, mildly. Yeah. But I know that it was also different for like our parents' generation, where it's back then it was like you picked a job and you stuck with it because you'd made your decision and you see it out to the end, right? And we're a little different these days. People turn over their jobs a lot more. But my dad, as much as, and he'll say this, he said this to me before, if he could go back, he would probably pick a different career.
Yeah.
But he certainly made the most of the job that he was in, because I remember it was a take your daughter to work day in junior high, I think. And so I got to go shadow my dad at his job. I couldn't tell you anything about what he did work-wise. And that's not a slight on my dad. Of course, he was good at his job. But what stood out to me the most all these years later is going out and meeting with his clients and seeing how he interacted with people. My dad has a gift.
Yeah, he does.
For connecting with others.
Yep. Yeah.
And I think that's how he found joy in this job that maybe wasn't his total passion, but he found a light within a job that maybe he didn't love as much. And you can do that. You can use your talents within the job that you have.
Yep.
Create something in your circumstances that brings you joy. You create that. You be a light for others. I have said this so many times. This was something that I would say over and over again to my students when I taught, was like, you have so much more power to do good than you realize, because you're not a victim of your circumstances. You have control. You can change things. You can speak up. You can take action. You can do kind things, and God will inspire you.
Yeah. Well, that reminds me of like President Nelson when he says that happiness has very little to do with the circumstances of our lives and everything to do with the focus of our lives. And I think,
and when the focus of our lives is on Jesus Christ,
exactly, which
I
think
be happy in any circumstance. Right?
Selfishly, yeah, like with seminary, I think that more than anything, that's just been a gift for me to force me to focus on Him, and
Absolutely.
that has what brought me happiness. You don't have to be a seminary teacher to be happy. The happiness is not dependent on our circumstances, as you could read in so many accounts, even from like Viktor Frankl in World War II in its concentration camps, but it has everything to do with the focus on our lives. And that reminds me, just one more quote from Elder Rasband, that he says, "The Lord loves to be with us. It is no coincidence that when you are feeling His Spirit and acting on first promptings, that you feel Him as He promised. I will go before your face. I will be on your right hand and on your left, and my spirit shall be in your hearts, and mine angels round about you to bear you up." And I just know that He'll go before us, that He'll be on our right hand and our left to guide us. And there's my son's clock again. And I know that He'll, if as twisty and turny as it'll be, He's not going to give us all the answers up front. Sometimes we can only see enough to take one more step in the right direction, or one more step this way. And if it's the wrong way, then we turn around and go back the other way. And He'll lead us and guide us. He's not going to give us all the answers up front. We need to learn it for ourselves. That's why we're here. But I do know that as our focus is on Jesus, things are going to work out. And I just want to add one more testimony to what Allie said about the people, because I would agree. The jobs that I've had where it's been a bit of a grind, where I have felt like that weariness of being in that and just, going through each day and just trying to make it count for something. It was the people. I look back at those jobs and I deeply love those people, and I'm so grateful for them. And some of my very best friendships since my mission have been in those jobs, and those relationships have played a huge role in who I am today. And so I completely agree with Allie that maybe those jobs, the job itself, the job description isn't ideal sometimes, but between the people and using our gifts in the circumstances that we are, there's still joy to be found, even in the little moments, especially with the relationships that we have with those people.
It's so nice to talk about these things and reflect back on the things that we've learned in the past few years, and all that we have yet to learn, right? I mean, this is not the end. Again, we talk about doing a podcast several years down the road where we can compare what we know now to what we'll know then.
Sure.
And we don't have all the answers, obviously, but we do absolutely 100% trust in God that He does know everything, and that if you just trust Him and just take those little steps, be brave, be kind, love the people around you, you'll find success in whatever you're doing.
Yeah. Especially to my younger students, former students, present students that are listening, don't be afraid of the future. It's going to be okay. If your focus is on Jesus, then things are going to be fine. Go use the next few years, several years, to just go sample, try things, see what, again, resonates with your soul. See what just like resonates with you. What do you just love? What's the passion? What's the interest? And like, what gets you going, and as you heed that inner voice, like who you are at your core, and as it is on the same, brought to the same frequency of our Heavenly Father, you'll find what you're looking for. And that might change in a few years, but at least for that time, you found it, and go after it. And as we constantly try to stay in the same frequency with our Heavenly Father, we'll never be led astray. And you're going to find joy in whatever circumstances you find yourself. And you'll find that whatever experiences you've gone through have all been meaningful learning experiences to guide you to where you are now. And it'll be what you have needed to get you along that path in becoming like our Father in heaven and like his Son, Jesus Christ. To that end, everybody, thanks for listening. We hope it's been helpful for you. We're excited for the future. All of us, no matter what age we are, I firmly believe that there will be many great important things revealed pertaining to your life, your kingdom. So thanks for listening, guys. We love you so much. Thank you for sharing this and being, bold on social media or wherever, however you've shared this podcast. And let's have your light out there too, in whatever way. Again, let's have the light overwhelm the darkness in whatever way we can. But if you wouldn't mind just giving us a quick rating and review and subscribing, that'd be wonderful. And until next time, we'll talk to you then.
Thank you.
See ya.